Welcome to Wellness Wednesday. Thanks for being patient. We had to do an update on both of our computers, and now hopefully things are smooth sailing. I'm here with Dr. David Ajibade. It is a pleasure to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. I wasn't sure you were welcoming me or live folks.
Welcoming you. So we connected back in the beginning of this year in January. You gave a talk with an elder care attorney called Don't Lose Your Marbles. Very clever title. And I am very grateful that you're willing to come and talk to the community, brain wellness and dementia prevention, share a little about you and your background and your expertise. And I'm looking forward to this conversation. Thank you again for being here.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I'm going to read a little bit. I might shorten it because you have an extensive bio, and maybe we'll hear more of it, but I won't bore you with, not that it's boring, but you don't want to hear me read forever. So Dr. David Ajibade is did I say it right?
Yes, Ajibade.
Is the executive director of Brain and Body Foundation, which is a 501c3, and it's based both in Nigeria and the US, and is focused on educating the Nigerian public on important health issues, providing innovative, practical, and safe solutions to challenging health conditions, and on alleviating the suffering of medically fragile children, especially those diagnosed with severe brain disorders, genetic disorders, and sickle cell disease. So the Body and Brain Foundation holds free clinics every Friday for children from low-income homes. And over the past 5 years, you'll probably share more about your the accomplishments and what the foundation has done. But one of the things you've done is given out nutraceuticals, over $500,000 worth of nutraceuticals to children, and successfully treated over 350 children with sickle cell disease, with an improvement rate of over 80%, which is fabulous. The Brain and Body Foundation works in partnership with the Federal Ministry of Health and the Nigerian military to address health challenges. And I will let everybody know that we're here with somewhat of a celebrity. So I was told I can call him David, so I'm going to call you David from now on. And so David currently hosts and presents a weekly TV show entitled Your Health in Your Hands. So I love that because you're really empowering people. You're giving them knowledge to take control of their own health. And it's an innovative show focused on educating the Nigerian public on health matters of special importance to people of Africa, especially of Black African origin. And in this 30-minute segment, it is the third most viewed show on Africa's largest television network. Woo! So I watched a couple. It's really informative. So we will probably get into more of that as we roll through the questions of the evening, but I would like to stop talking and hear from you. So what's the journey that led you to becoming a doctor? And I'm sure there's a long journey of like most people's paths are. It's not always direct. But did you know when you were like 5 years old that you wanted to be a doctor, or how did yeah?
That's exactly the age I knew I was going to be a doctor. Exactly the age I knew. It was all my mom's fault. You know how moms are. She's like, you got to be a doctor. You can help more people, and then you make a lot more money. And I don't know about that money aspect. I don't know why that stuck in my mind so much, but that's what I had always thought. I don't know why that should have been a motivating factor, but that's what I remembered. And basically that you were going to do. Yeah, I didn't really know much about the helping a lot of people part. I just thought, well, so I'm smart. I'm going to be a doctor, make a lot of money. And I had no other options. I was maybe architecture, but nothing else. I mean, throughout, that's all even when we were filling in our forms for university, because in Nigeria, you go straight into undergrad and you do 6-7 straight years of medical school. And that was the only option I had. you were supposed to choose one of three options. You were supposed to give three options, and then the college would select which one you were most likely to get into. And I couldn't think of anything else. So it was medicine. And everybody thought I was bonkers for doing that. But that's kind of like, I guess you call it destiny. But just to answer your question about my journey, it's been a really windy, torturous journey. I thought I was going to be a neurosurgeon. Dr. Ben Carson was my idol and my inspiration. Actually got to meet him about 10 years ago. Great guy. I always thought I wanted to be a brain person. Went through medical school and then started practicing. It was my housemanship. So after medical school of 6 years, you have a 1 year practice. It's called housemanship. Over here, you go straight into residency, but in Nigeria, you do a 1 year housemanship where you go through the four main divisions of medicine, and then you get to make up your mind what exactly you want to do. And it was while I was there, I was in a Baptist missionary hospital, and we did a lot of surgeries, even for young doctors like me, because we had missionary doctors coming in from the US, and everything from brain surgeries to deliveries to cesarean sections. I was always the person next to the doctor doing the surgery. So I saw all this. And I got to tell you, Laurel, I thought, well, I don't think I want to spend the rest of my life in an operating room. This is not that much fun. Besides, the nurses were terrible, very nasty, and so were the other technical people and all that. Some of them were nice. So, I mean, I don't want to be nasty, but some were just, just get over it. It was crazy. So I just didn't like the whole idea of being a surgeon. And then I thought about research. I thought about medicine, but things didn't happen like they should have. Like many times they don't. And I wanted to come to the US. I couldn't make it then. So I think after a 2 to 3 year delay, I got into radiation oncology, which is cancer treatment. And I think that's when my views really began to change. I had always been interested in the human body and in the human brain, obviously, but also more importantly, in the potential and the capacity of the body to heal itself. Mm-hmm. Saw that when it came to cancer. Mm-hmm. With cancer, obviously, it's a terminal disease, but we could clearly see that there were some, even with the stage 4 disease, some who did better and others who didn't do as well. And a lot of it had to do with, because they were all receiving the same treatment, by the way, they were all receiving the same treatment. Some did a lot better. And yes, genes could play a part, but also attitude, what you say, the nutrition you put in your body, your work, your relationships, all those things all factor in. And I began to see that live and direct. And that began to form in me what I later on created, what is now called the laws of life, about 7 characteristics, which we probably won't go into now. But I began to see how important those other aspects were to health. And we weren't really studying them in medical school and weren't teaching about them. So I really came to the US, and now it's almost 20 years ago, and I came to learn about all those other factors and see how we can optimize human health and human potential that way. And so that was a long journey. And then to quick cuts to recently, so I went back, I was in the US for about 10 years and went back to Nigeria for another 9 years. And while I was in Nigeria, we began to see all sorts of problems among kids with brain disorders. And because of my experience in the US, I had learned a lot about nutraceuticals and nutrition and how to, shall we say, biohack the brain and make it pick up, how to push it to heal itself, to repair itself, to recover itself. And we saw that simple nutrients given in specific amounts, given at specific doses and specific times could, like I said, biohack and stimulate the brain and the body to repair itself. And we began to do that, and the results were fantastic. And so that's kind of like we saw that this could help a lot of people, and we also felt that it was important for us to educate people about these things. So that's kind of how we started the Brain and Body Foundation, and that's the journey so far.
Yeah. So say a little more about the Brain and Body Foundation. So that's been since 2015. Is that right?
Yeah.
So share more about that.
Sure. So initially it was actually a clinic. We started a clinic and we were like, we're going to make lots of money and treating all these rich Nigerians. And it so happened that most of the Nigerians were going abroad for treatment. So we were left with many of the poor people who couldn't afford it. So we figured, well, if we're going to, we still have to help these people. So we set up the foundation to see if we could get help and support from companies and organizations. Many of the companies were in the US who were donating some of their breakthrough nutraceuticals. So each Friday, like you said, we get kids and parents come from all over the city, and they receive, while I was there, now I have someone else who does it. We sit down with a doctor free of charge, go over their problems, their fill forms. We see the kids, we give them the nutrients free of charge, and then take videos, and then they come back after 2 weeks, after a month, and we see the difference and we call that difference. So we've collected a huge amount of data on brain disorders, everything from autism to cerebral palsy to sickle cell disease, something else, seizures, strokes, and so on and so forth. So we have all that, and we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot from that. We've published on the I think the PubMed. There's our articles on PubMed about our approach to these disorders. NIH, and I think it's the NIH website, one of the two anyway. And our TV show, which is part of what we do with the Brain and Body Foundation, our TV show, I was just told by the producer that we've been nominated for an award, an African award. So I guess we're doing well where that's concerned as well.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you, and it's pretty cool, especially since you're not actually in the country doing the shows. So thank God for technology, right?
Right.
And so sickle cell disease. So speaking of, while we were doing all this treating kids with brain disorders, we started having kids coming to our center who were suffering from sickle cell disease and who had multiple strokes from sickle cell disease before the age of 10. And that was shocking to me. Before the age of 10, parents are wheeling them in on wheelchairs.
Wow.
And last time I saw a kid with sickle cell disease was like 25 years ago when in medical school. And I was like, this is just, are you trying to tell me that we haven't progressed much since then? And anyway, long story short, I just dug into the data, the treatments. And by the way, Nigeria is Grand Central Station for sickle cell disease worldwide. We have the most numbers of cases by far, and we have the most severe. And 10% of all kids with sickle cell disease will have a stroke, usually between the ages of 2 and 16. So it's a really bad condition. I mean, stroke is just one thing. There's a lot of other things complications they suffer from. And I couldn't believe that so many people were still suffering like this in the 21st century. So like I said, we dug into it and we found out again that the same principles that we applied to treating brain conditions, we could apply to treating sickle cell disease with significantly less cost and almost immediate improvement. And for those of you who don't know what sickle cell disease is a blood disorder in which the red blood cells, under certain conditions, tend to sickle. They dehydrate, they shrivel up, and they become hard and sickle-shaped instead of round and elliptical and soft and flexible. And because they are hard and sickle-shaped, they can't flow through the blood vessels like they should, and they end up getting stuck and blocking the blood vessels. Well, what happens when the blood vessels are blocked? Well, if it's in the heart, you get a heart attack. If it's in the brain, you get a stroke. If it's in the joints and the muscles, you get pain and swelling and inflammation. And that's, and these kids had a lot of that, a lot of pain and joints and all that. And millions and they say billions are being spent on researching it and trying to treat, because they're all focused on the red blood cell. So we decided to take a different tact. Rather than looking at the red blood cell where the problem actually was, we started looking at other things like the surrounding, what's in the environment of the red blood cell that makes it go sickled. And there were simple things like infections and immune dysfunction. And we just started looking at, okay, what can we do, for instance, to strengthen the immune system? What can we do to reduce inflammation? And like I said, the results were fantastic. And we eventually went to the government and we said we could help in this case. And they gave us full backing without the money.
Yes, you have our permission.
We're attaboy, go for it. But that was all there was to it. So But that was good enough for us. At least if you're going to do something that's outside the box, you want to have the backing of the authorities that be, or the powers that be. And so they gave us permission to start doing this research. And last week, the state government, so the federal government had given us the backing about a year ago, but we still needed the state government, or a state government that would take the chance on us and let us do the research in their hospitals. And so finally we got that approval last week. So I'm pretty excited.
Yeah.
We're going to start that research next week, and hopefully it's going to change the course of the lives of a lot of people. Nigeria has over 4 million kids with 4 million people living with sickle cell disease. So a lot of people are suffering, and I think it's about time we change the way they're being treated.
Wow, that's an amazing story. I knew very little about sickle cell other than my husband has a trait and one of our 3 kids has a trait, and that people who have the disease have a lot of pain. But I didn't know about the heart attacks and strokes, and I certainly didn't know that there are other ways to address it, but it totally makes sense. I mean, that's from my training in functional medicine. You go farther upstream and you look at the root cause. And like you said, you started looking more at the environment, the whole picture. It's fabulous. And I'm so excited for you that you now have the state approval and can do studies in the hospital. It's awesome.
Awesome. Yes, it is.
Yeah. So I think we're gonna go to school a little bit here with you, right? You have a little PowerPoint to share with us. We're gonna hear how the human brain in the 21st century is under siege, but being the person that you are, it's not a bunch of fear mongering without like the little bits that we can do to influence our own personal health. We are under siege, but we can't just go in our bed and hide under the covers. There's some things we can do about it.
Right.
So I'm ready to hear, I'm ready to learn, and I'm sure there's other people out there ready for the same.
Awesome. Well, before we go into the slides, I just thought we should do a preamble, kind of like just have an idea of what exactly is going on, and well, maybe not exactly, but at least have an idea of what's where things are going with regards to the brain. And I really think we need to be concerned about this, because I think we're facing a lot more than ever before the threat of damage to our brains, and a lot of it is insidious. It's not it doesn't show up right off the bat, right? It's something that is progressive over a period of time. I think you and I, Laura, were talking about the increase in technology. Now we're talking about Facebook is talking about Meta. There's a new word which we hadn't heard before called the metaverse. The metaverse, in which you'll be moving between virtual and reality in such a way that you won't be able to tell the two apart anymore. Well, with all this technology and all this increased computing power, there's bound to be a lot of EMX, electromagnetic frequencies, and all these waves, radio waves, that we're going to be more bombarded with, not just our bodies, but our brains as well. I mean, everything. I mean, right now, we were talking about using cell phones for too long. Well, we've gone way past cell phones on our heads. We have all kinds of gadgets on our bodies and on our heads that are going to be slowly damaging our brains. Not to mention stress, not to mention what we're dealing with right now, COVID-19. A third of all people who actually have suffered the disease called COVID-19 end up being known as long haulers, which means they continue to suffer symptoms 3 months, 6 months afterwards. And most of those symptoms affect the brain. I can't tell you how many people are now saying that they're more tired than they were before. They have mental brain fog. They can't remember like they used to. And that happened after they had the COVID-19 disease. So that's going to be something we're going to be looking at a lot. And then, of course, the mental health problems that have arisen as a result of this pandemic, whether among children, which is terrible, but also in adults. When I was in Nigeria, we were hearing about a lot of family squabbles between husband and wife. Again, that causes stress, breakup, Isolation is another thing. So all those things build up. And then not to mention the things that we already know about. We're using more medications than ever before. Medications, almost every kind of medication is going to affect your brain. I'm not saying you shouldn't use them, but you need to be aware that it's going to affect your brain as well. Obesity is on the rise, and therefore a lot of unhealthy foods, processed foods, foods contain antibiotics, foods contain, processed foods contain preservatives and all these other chemicals which you cannot pronounce. And so it's all combining. And now we know Alzheimer's disease, there are about 6 million people living with Alzheimer's disease. The numbers are going to more than double by 2050. Is it going to be worse among Africans and darker skinned people? And there's a clue to why that is so. It's not just about race and racial differences in healthcare, I can tell you that. Autism too is a big problem. Numbers are multiplying. I checked recently, it's 1 in 68. It's still 1 in 68 kids that are going to have autism. That number is going to continue to increase. But I saw something tragic, Laurel, in New Jersey. The number is 1 in 28 boys have autism. Wow. Now, why New Jersey? I don't know, but it's 1 in 28. So that's a big problem. So bottom line is that we're looking at the problems that already are now, and that the problems are already going, and these problems are only going to get worse and worse and worse. So the question is, what do you do to protect your brain? You don't want to wait until you begin to see the symptoms, because brain conditions can take years to eventually manifest, but it's going on underneath. So let me show the slides. I think we'll show a slide. Laurel, please feel free to interrupt me, chime in, ask a question. I will not hurt my feelings, I promise you.
Okay. And I'm looking in the group to see if anybody has comments or questions as well. So if anybody does, you can go ahead and type it in.
Okay. I think I'm just going to go back and forth a little bit. But I have here a picture of the brain. And so what we've been doing, I know we've talked a lot about the Brain and Body Foundation with our work with kids. But because of all the things we learned about the kids, we now people began to approach us for problems in adults, like elderly or children of elderly parents who were having signs of dementia or who had a full-blown dementia, people who had strokes, people who are having anything from seizure disorders and so on and so forth. So and the advantage with working with kids is that with kids, you have to be a lot more careful. So we were able to find out the right nutrients and the right combination of nutrients that will help kids. And all we had to do was just extrapolate it and apply that to adults. And the key is this: if it's saving kids, you can be sure you can be almost 100% certain it's going to be saving adults. So we had the advantage of starting with kids first and then applying that in adults, and we're able to apply the same principles, probably larger doses, but in adults we saw significant improvements. So I think the whole point when you're looking at protecting your brain or improving brain health is that you got to remember that you can't look at your brain in isolation. Now, it is the most complex piece of machinery in the known universe, but it doesn't act on its own and it doesn't work on its own. It relies on inputs and collaboration from other cells in the body. In front of you here is what I call the central governing system. Central governing system. Don't you like the ring of that? Don't you like that ring? Central governing system. Anyway, the nervous system which is the head of that is the brain. So the brain and nervous system, they control the endocrine system, which are the hormones, testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, insulin, and all the other like 200 different hormones, which control the immune system. Now, they said 1 in 4 cells in the body is an immune cell. So the immune system is like a vulture, and it helps to protect the body against invasion, but it also protects the body against itself. And we won't go much into that. We have about 40 trillion cells, but these 3 systems control these. So one of the things we found out is that if we are going to help anybody who has suffered a stroke or suffered from dementia or any other kind of brain disorder, you've got to take these three systems into account. But it's not just these 3 systems. we also found out that this other important system, which I call, well, I want to read this quote out to you. I am convinced that proper digestion is the great secret of life. When I wrote my first book many years ago, a biochemist, the editor of the biochemistry book, most of the world uses in undergrad studies, he sent in this quote to me, and at that time I didn't really think much of it. I was like, what does the digestive system have to do with brain disorders, for instance, or with cancer? I mean, it has nothing, right? Later on, we found out how wrong I was. But this is the great secret of life, and I'm going to tell you a few things why. But before that, I want to emphasize that the very best thing you can do for your health is to ensure that your digestive system is healthy. This, my friends, has come after decades of being in medicine, well, two plus decades of being a doctor. Especially when it comes to brain disorders. I've spent a lot of time, we've seen hundreds and hundreds of kids with brain disorders. And we've come to this fact, this realization after all that time, that if you don't take care of the gut, you are pretty much fighting with one hand behind your back and probably blindfolded as well. So why is that important? Okay, this is a slide I'm going to come down to. Well, think about it. The digestive system, without the digestive system, you won't be able to get food into your body. It's through your digestive system that food comes into your body. Food is digested, and the food provides the raw materials for the repair of your body cell, of your tissues and your organs. It also helps your body run. It provides the fuel for which your body to run on. It also provides the protection for your body because your cells need the nutrients from food to protect itself. Those are basic things. But over and beyond that, over 70 to 80% of your immune system resides in the gut. 70 to 80%. We weren't taught that in medical school. Nobody taught us that. Beyond that, a large percentage of the microbiome or the probiotics or the bacteria in your gut produce hormones or hormone-like molecules which affect your endocrine system. It affect your testosterone levels. They affect your estrogen levels. I'm using testosterone because I'm obviously a guy, at least last time I checked. And so it could be the other way around. It could be your immune, it could be your insulin, it could be your thyroid hormones, it could be anything. But the cells and the bugs in your gut influence to a very large degree your hormones, the ability to metabolize. There have been studies about obese people who now had the microbiome of a thin person put inside them, and they within a few months became thin and skinny just from the transplant of bugs from a thin person. So huge amount of research about the bugs in the gut. But again, the digestive system produces 95%, we're talking about the nervous system now, 95% of all the dopamine that is produced and used in your body, not the brain, but the digestive system produces 95% excuse me, I made it wrong. 95% of serotonin, 95% serotonin. Some of the most successful drugs in the world as antidepressants made from serotonin, called what are known as SSRIs, serotonin uptake, selective serotonin uptake.
Inhibitors.
What's it called?
Inhibitors, right?
Yeah, inhibitors. Yeah, reuptake inhibitors. There you go. I think it's in the gut. 50% of the dopamine, and we all know about dopamine, cocaine, reward centers, and all that is produced in the digestive system. So if you're gonna take care of anybody with any kind of brain disorder, whether it's autism or dementia or strokes or whatever it is, you've got to start with the gut. You've got to start with the gut. And there are about 7 areas that I like to point to. I did this for a group in Dubai that caters to mothers of kids with autism. And I mentioned about 7 areas that you've got to pay attention to. You've got to pay attention to, and there are different things that can be used to help with these things. Again, well, let me just point out that it's not all about the gut. I'm just emphasizing that most people, most healthcare professionals tend to overlook the gut. And I'm saying that you need to change that to see that the gut should be the primary approach to brain disorders, and you can fit the other things around it. Like I mentioned, the immune system, the endocrine system, and the others. We also want to talk about the cardiovascular system, especially where strokes are concerned, because I know I'm skipping around a little bit, but where strokes are concerned, you've got to provide nutrients that help the body rebuild the damaged blood vessels that were blocked or that burst or that were damaged. So you also want to think about that as well. So I always talk about 5 systems, and if you count the detoxification system as a system, then you would say 6 systems. So here they are: the nervous system, the endocrine system, the immune system, the top 3, then the digestive system, the cardiovascular system, and then the detoxification system. Those are the 6 systems you've got to pay attention to if you're dealing with brain conditions, or if you want to improve your health, your brain health. But again, the one most important one is the digestive system. So I'm kind of giving you a lot of time to look at these seven points. Do you want to talk about these, Laurel?
I'm just going to piggyback on what you've already said. And I'm so glad that you're highlighting the gut, because I think of the guests that I've had in the Wellness Wednesday, it's been touched upon, but it's never been drilled home like you just did. And I'm a fairly new functional medicine practitioner, just under 2 years now. I think I told you it was 9 months, but I 2020 sort of mushed together in a big blur. So it'll be 2 years in January. And just like you said, every single client, the gut. The gut is the place to start. We'll start looking at other places, and then we have to keep circling back to the gut. So when the gut issues are less primary, then we start looking at toxins. I've had several clients with Lyme and mold issues, so that can be a big issue. You have that as number 7, but
not in that order, though. Not in any order. This is
okay, right? Yeah. I mean, a lot of these are gut related. They're all gut related, really.
Yeah.
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 Thank you for pressing that and really drilling that topic, that point.
You bet. So is there any here that you think we need to emphasize for your audience?
Well, some people might say, well, how do I know that there's a problem?
Great question. As I giggled, I thought about they've been making fun of one of the I think it was the energy secretary of recent, who's been who giggled at a very serious question, and I'm like, why am I giggling? So what was the question again?
How do I know there's a problem with my gut?
Okay, good question. So here's what they found out. They say almost 60% of all cases, if you have a gut problem, doesn't show up as an actual gut symptom. You may not feel a single thing in your gut. You may be going to the restroom like you should. And by the way, and just a quick backup, most of what I practice is in Nigeria, Africa. That's where my license is, and that's where my foundation is, and that's where I have the backing of the government is. Most people simply don't have access to all the super duper gadgets, diagnostic tools, the therapeutic tools that you all have in the United States. So we have to go by symptoms, and we have to go by, and we just go ahead and treat based on what the person is telling us. Having said that, and then that's why I don't use medication. I don't use drugs at all. As I know I am a doctor, but I do not use drugs at all. Everything I use is a nutrient that is safe and has been proven to be safe in kids. That way I can go to bed and rest easy, because once you start using medication, you've got to start doing the tests to monitor and make sure they don't go to high levels. So we can't do that in Africa or Nigeria, obviously. So we just got to stay in the straight and narrow, so to speak. So if you have brain fog, if you have stress, if you're not sleeping well, if you're tired all the time, if you have any of several symptoms that you just feel all is not right, there's a really good chance. And when I say a really good chance, I'm saying 99.99% chance that your gut is affected. So it's not a question of how do I know my gut is affected. It's a question of what do I need to do with my what are the first one or two things that I need to do to start strengthening my gut, because your gut is affected. There's no question.
Yeah. And those sound like listen to your body. Those are early symptoms. Don't wait till it's down the road. I see a lot of people with skin issues that are often related to the gut that can clear up when the gut gets cleared up. I'll use myself as an example. Before I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and went down this path of treating myself with the help of the advice of a nutritionist, did not use pharmaceuticals, used nutraceuticals and diet change and stress management. And I didn't go to her because I had eczema, and I didn't go to her because I had stomach aches. I went to her because I had a new diagnosis of MS. But when I started following all these guidelines that were going to help my MS, my eczema went away. Hives that I often would get and could never link it to a cause, I could never figure it out. They went away. I haven't had eczema or hives or a sinus infection or a stomach ache in decades, since I started this, not quite 2 decades, but decade and a half. So I still have work to do on my gut. I know this is a long-standing issue for me. And so that's why I'm glad that you highlighted the early signals. So it's people don't get to the point where they're so constipated, or they have diarrhea, or they're in, have celiac disease, or have Crohn's. They're farther down the road in an autoimmune issue. So I appreciate those early signals that you mentioned.
Right. And so there's some other obvious things too. If you're not stooling at least twice a day, unless you're genetically programmed to be like that, maybe your parents who are like that and didn't have any issues, you should be stooling at least twice a day, or pooping at least twice a day. Your poop should be, you can go on the internet. There are characteristics of what a good healthy poop should look like. What's that scale called again? Do you know what it's called?
No. I'm going to giggle about it now. I've heard like a banana, the size of a banana, the shape and consistency of a banana.
Like an S-shaped thing, and so on and so forth. Maybe if you're having watery stools, all is not well with your gut, for instance. Or if your stool is way too high, all is not well with your gut. If you're constipated and you're not stooling more than one, you should be stooling twice a day, but if it's like once in 3 days, it's not cool. I know ladies, I had my experiences with ladies think it's cool not to go to the restroom, and they hold it back for days on end, and it's like, oh yeah, I can hold it for that long. No. It's that could be a problem. What else? There's also this other one that Dr. Gundry talks about, where he says that you know who Dr. Gundry is?
Right. Yes.
Brilliant cardiothoracic surgeon, pediatric cardio transplant surgeon as well. And he said, if you have to, if your gut is healthy, you don't have to wipe your butt.
I haven't heard that.
Have you heard that more than twice?
No, I hadn't heard that before.
If you have to wipe it more than once, it's like have leaky gut. That's what he said. Have leaky.
I haven't heard that.
Oh, I was surprised to hear it myself too. All of you hoarding toilet paper for you may check yourself. You need to mainly check yourself. So so those are obvious things we've got. But like you said, Laurel, I don't think people, you don't want to wait until it becomes a full-blown problem. Obviously, if you have bloating and gas, and that's another thing too. I mean, as we grow older, our enzymes, and that's one of the things on the list I showed, our enzymes reduce. We don't produce enough enzymes to digest the food, and so we end up tending to bloat and have a lot of gas in our abdomen. That's an enzyme deficiency. So if you have enough enzymes, you will find out that bloating and swelling of the gut is reduced. It could also be as a result of probiotics. I mean, you don't have enough good bacteria because the bacteria also produce enzymes. So you need to take care of your gut. One of the most important things that I think are important for the gut is psyllium husk. I get mine from Whole Foods. It made a huge difference for me. A friend of mine back in Nigeria, he just ordered for another 10. So I had to send them to him I sent him like 10 canisters to Nigeria because he's like, everybody's commenting. He's like his belly, his big belly, beer belly has suddenly shrunk in size because he's stooling now for the first time in many years. He's going to the bathroom and actually evacuating, getting rid of the stuff that has been sitting there for years and years. And what they say, Laurel, is that most of us have like the remnants of like our last 8 meals still stuck in our gut that's just sitting there and hasn't gotten out yet. And that's a bad thing because once things start getting stuck there, you're going to be producing a lot of bad bacteria and bad bugs, which will produce chemicals which can cause damage to the gut and enter the bloodstream and cause damage to the brain and cause inflammation. So there's a lot going on there. So you do want to address the guts, but like I said, you want to address the other things, the other parts of the body as well. The immune system, the endocrine system, the brain, and there are nutrients that affect all these different things. So when I see patients, like I said, we can't do a CT scan or anything like that. So a friend of mine she told me she spent $6,000 on a CT scan for her gallbladder problem. Well, $6,000 is like, that's like you might as well say $6 billion to a Nigerian because nobody's going to put that kind of money down for a CT scan, and they don't have insurance the way you all have it here. So we have to go by the signs and the symptoms, and we have to go by what we think we're going to have to triage it and say, okay, what is the most important thing based on what this person has told me? Let's start there, and then after a few weeks, we reevaluate, and then we'll build upon that. We build upon that, and we build upon that. Sometimes, for most of my patients, I don't even see them. I just go by what the caregiver tells me. Like if it's a parent of a child with autism, I work with the parent. If it's a child of a parent of a person with dementia or stroke, I go by what the person says. And after a few months of treatment, they send me a video of the person either walking or doing things they couldn't do before. And it's based on what they told me. So it needs, like I said, we're fortunate to be able to have this huge data set of people we could work with day in, day out and see and understand how these things actually work. And then, now, like I said, I don't have to see them anymore because of what we now know. But again, it's come through a lot of experience and a lot of trial and error. And the fact that we use nutrients and we don't use medication at all it also helps as well, because most people don't react to nutrients. I'm not saying everybody, most people do not, unless they specifically tell me they have an allergy, then we can go from there. But most people don't react to nutrients, and so it helps. The only risk there is maybe they end up spending money and that specific nutrient or brand of nutrients does not work.
Right. I feel like we could talk for hours on each of these little topics. So I might have to invite you back for another one because I don't want to keep you the whole night, because I want to make sure that you get to share how people can stay connected with you. Maybe we can watch your show, even though it's broadcast in Nigeria. I don't know, does it play here? I watched a couple. I think they were on the Brain Body Foundation website. Yeah. So if somebody wants to stay connected with you, if they want to donate in any way to Brain Body Foundation, how do we find you? How do we stay connected?
Oh, great question. So we are on brainandbodyfoundation.org. Let me see if you can just Something just showed up on my screen now. I don't know why it just suddenly popped up. Goodness gracious. So things, this pops up, happen at the worst possible time. So let me just type that here. So it's www.brainandbodyfoundation.org. And like I said, with this permission we've been given, we're in a mad scramble now to raise the funds for the research. It's about $150,000 for about 6 months, and we're working on 3 different hospitals. So there's a way you can donate to our foundation. It's a 501c3, so it's tax deductible, and we will send you a receipt for that. If you can consider doing a monthly charge, we would really appreciate it. We will, of course, we'll be very accountable to you. And then you're going to see what we're doing. We're going to be sending updates of the research in the different hospitals and with the doctors and the patients. So you'll see exactly what is going on. And it's groundbreaking, I think. Like I said, it's going to affect the lives of millions of people, not just in Nigeria, but around the world who have sickle cell disease. So there's a donate button right on the website. Just get there, by the way.
Good. And we connected on LinkedIn. Are you anywhere else on any other social media platforms?
Yes. So we are Brain and Body Foundation on all the platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, although Twitter has been banned in Nigeria. Yeah. I think the president of Nigeria didn't like what Twitter said to them. So the president decided to ban Twitter from Nigeria. That's what happens when you live in a dictatorship. Not gonna say it. They want to ban me. Anyway, so we're on all the different platforms. So we would love to connect with you all on our platforms.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very much for being here tonight and sharing your knowledge. And putting it in a way that was very easily digestible, a little pun intended there, about the digestive system, and really to drive home the gut issue and to focus on these things early, because there is typically 20 years before we see any symptoms of brain issues as far as dementia is concerned. 20 years prior to that, things are happening in the body that we can impact. So start now when you're 20, 30, 40, or younger than that, if you're helping children early. So that's fabulous. Thank you so much again. And I look forward to connecting very soon.
Absolutely. See you soon. Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.